I used to believe that if you kept your head down, worked harder than everyone else, and stayed loyal long enough, the world would eventually notice. My name is Ryan Matthews. I'm 48 years old. And the moment that belief died was the moment my CEO laughed in my face. Her laughter echoed off the glass walls of her corner office, sharp and careless, like something thrown instead of spoken. 8%? Nicole Walsh said, wiping at the corner of her eye as if I'd just told her a joke. At your age, Ryan, we're looking for hungry young talent, not expensive legacy employees clinging to outdated approaches. She leaned back in her chair, still smiling, the framed Harvard MBA behind her catching the light like a medal she wore without shame. I stood there gripping a leather portfolio that held 16 years of work, systems I'd designed, disasters I'd prevented, nights I'd sacrificed, while a 37-year-old CEO dismissed my entire career like expired software. That folder wasn't just paper, it was my life. Every major infrastructure overhaul, every security framework that kept the company alive while she collected bonuses big enough to buy vacation homes. I'd been at Tech Vault Solutions since we were a 50-person startup, long before the glass offices and innovation awards. Back when staying up until 3 in the morning meant survival, not branding. I believed in the company. I believed in loyalty. I believed that experience mattered. Apparently, I was wrong. Nicole waved away my words when I reminded her of the cloud migration that saved the company millions every year. She didn't care about the ransomware attack I'd quietly neutralized before it ever reached the press. She smiled the way executives smile when they've already decided you're irrelevant. Everyone is replaceable, she said softly. Even senior engineers with decades of experience. If you think you're worth more, you're free to try elsewhere. Maybe it's time to consider early retirement. Golf courses are nice this time of year. Something inside me cracked. Not anger, not sadness. Something colder. 16 years of believing the system would reward loyalty collapsed in a single sentence. I nodded, gathered my things, and walked out with what dignity I had left while my coworkers pretended not to watch through the glass. Back at my desk, my workspace, not even an office, I stared at the chaos I held together every day. Slack messages from junior engineers asking for help, emails from departments panicking over problems they'd caused, calendar reminders for meetings where I'd once again explain why shortcuts failed at scale. Next to my keyboard sat a family photo, my wife Sarah smiling through chemotherapy exhaustion, my daughter Emma home from college with tuition rising faster than my salary, my son Jake already calculating which dreams he'd have to abandon to avoid burying us in debt. Healthcare premiums ate nearly a third of my income. Cancer treatments drained what savings we had left. And I'd just been laughed at for asking for an 8% raise. I opened my desk drawer and pulled out a worn leather notebook. This one wasn't company property. It never had been. Inside were years of personal projects, ideas born on weekends, code written on my own hardware, algorithms developed in my garage while the world slept. I flipped to pages marked with dates, commits, diagrams. Innovations that TechVault proudly marketed as breakthroughs. Systems that formed the backbone of their competitive edge. What Nicole never knew was that I never signed those ideas away. I scrolled through my personal GitHub account on my phone. Every repository time-stamped, every commit documented. The threat detection engine, built to protect my home network, the optimization framework, a side project to cut my own server costs. I'd shared everything out of loyalty, never imagining the company would one day treat me like dead weight. An email popped up announcing another industry award. Nicole's face smiled back at me from the screen, praising innovation while naming no one. I thought about my parents, both replaced after decades of loyalty, given plaques instead of protection. I should have listened. That's when I opened LinkedIn and stared at a message I'd ignored for months. Scott Rodriguez, VP of Engineering at TechFlow Solutions, TechVault's biggest rival. We value experience, his message read. Gray hair means wisdom, not obsolescence. My finger hovered. Fear screamed at me to stop. What if this passed? What if Nicole reconsidered? Then I remembered her laugh. I pressed call. Scott Rodriguez, he answered. This is Ryan Matthews, I said. I think it's time we talked. Dinner turned into recognition I hadn't felt in years. Scott didn't talk in buzzwords. He talked in architecture, in consequences, in respect. He offered me leadership, equity, and something more valuable than money: credit, ownership, a future. When he asked about my personal projects, I saw understanding in his eyes. TechFlow didn't steal innovation. They paid for it. I accepted the offer that night. 3 weeks later, TechVault's systems began failing one by one. Nothing malicious, nothing illegal. Just the absence of the person who knew how to hold it all together. Nicole called, then emailed, then panicked. I didn't respond. By the time the board realized what they'd lost, I was already gone. My code protected, my future secure, my family finally breathing again. Nicole never laughed at me after that. If you've ever been underestimated, discarded, or told your time had passed, tell me, what would you have done in my place? Would you stay loyal, or would you walk away and take your worth with you?